Usually, when you talk about political influence, there's this fundamental assumption that the whole arena is just defined by sheer, overwhelming noise.
Right. Just chaos.
Exactly. You picture this massive echoing chamber, right, where you got thousands of disparate advocacy groups, lobbyists, highly energized citizens, and they're all just screaming at the exact same time.
Yeah, everybody has their own fiercely guarded agenda.
Right, and the politicians who are standing right in the center of that room, they survive simply by tuning it all out.
They have to. It's survival.
Right. They might selectively listen to, whichever voice happens to be screaming the loudest or maybe waving the largest check in that exact millisecond. But for the most part, the chaos is their shield.
The fragmentation of the electorate is, well, it's the ultimate political camouflage.
Yeah.
Because when a politician is bombarded by 1,000 conflicting demands from 1,000 uncoordinated groups, they are completely liberated from actual accountability.
They can just play both sides.
Exactly. They can tell Group A one thing, Group B another thing entirely, and just rely on the sheer friction of the system to ensure nothing gets done, all while maintaining, plausible deniability with everybody.
But then you step into the world of veteran advocacy in the state of Georgia, and suddenly that chaotic, deafening room goes completely silent.
The shouting just stops.
It stops.
Yeah.
You aren't looking at a disorganized mob of competing interests anymore. You're looking at a disciplined, heavily structured formation.
It's a totally different landscape.
It really is. It's a landscape that is strategically terrifying if you're an elected official who, relies on that camouflage we just talked about.
Oh, absolutely terrifying.
And the group architecting this silence and this resulting targeted pressure is the Veterans Coalition Foundation, Inc.
Right.
So today, for this deep dive, we are tearing right into their operational blueprint because we have a massive stack of primary sources directly from the coalition.
Really incredible sources, yeah.
Yeah, detailing exactly how they operate, who runs their strategy, and most importantly, how they fund an advocacy engine of this insane scale.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because we are looking at an absolute masterclass in the mechanics of political leverage here.
We really are.
To understand the gravity of what the Veterans Coalition is doing, you have to look at the fundamental problem of veteran advocacy historically.
Right.
You've got dozens, maybe hundreds, of veteran service organizations, VSOs, operating totally independently.
The silos.
Exactly, the silos. You have the disabled American veterans, the veterans of foreign wars, the American Legion, and then alongside them, countless smaller, highly localized community groups.
Like the neighborhood posts?
Yeah, and individually, these organizations do essential work. They really do. But politically, they're operating completely in the dark relative to each other.
Which means they are just easily dismissed. I mean, a local VSO chapter with, say, 500 members might show up to the Georgia State Capitol to protest a cut to mental health funding. But at 500 scattered votes, that's not going to unseat a sitting governor.
No, not at all.
Or alter a major piece of state legislation. They just kind of bounce off the hull of the political machine. It's like trying to move a battleship with a fleet of rowboats.
I love that analogy, yeah.
Individually, these small VSOs just bounce off the hull. But if you tie them all together into a fleet moving in one direction, the battleship has no choice but to change course.
And that is exactly what the Veterans Coalition Foundation recognized, that structural weakness. Their primary stated mission is the absolute unification of all Georgia VSOs, regardless of size, under a single operational umbrella.
They're consolidating the fragmented landscape.
Consolidating it, yes. And the number that jumps out of their internal documentation is just staggering. They boast a unified membership base of 1.8 million people.
Wait, 1.8 million?
1.8 million.
I mean, in the context of a single state's voting population, that is not an advocacy group. That is a demographic titan.
It's massive.
But I'm looking at this strategy, and I have to be honest here. Most voters, even highly motivated ones, they don't follow legislative minutia.
No, they don't.
So, aggregating 1.8 million names on a server doesn't automatically equal leverage. You can have 2 million people on an email list, and if they don't vote systematically, they are functionally invisible to the political establishment.
That's the real challenge, right?
So how does a nonprofit actually weaponize that list without losing the audience's attention? But do these things actually make politicians sweat, or is it just a newsletter?
What's fascinating here is how they completely remove the friction of political research for their members. They utilize what they call the report card.
The report card.
Yeah. The coalition tracks and publishes a regular, hyper-transparent grading system that tells their 1.8 million members exactly how their state and congressional representatives are handling critical veteran issues.
Oh, wow. So they are taking the incredibly dense, purposefully opaque language of state legislation and distilling it down to, what, an A to F grading scale.
Better than that, they are circumventing the public relations spin entirely. If you look at the source material, it explicitly points out that they don't just track the final floor votes.
Okay.
They are tracking the records of legislators on the committees responsible for reviewing veterans legislation.
On the committees.
Yes, this is the crucial mechanism.
Explain why the committee level is the linchpin here. Because, I mean, to the average civilian, a vote is a vote, right?
Right, but the floor vote is purely theater.
Theater. Yeah.
Totally. By the time a bill actually reaches the floor of the legislature, its fate is already largely decided. The real political warfare happens in the committees.
Behind closed doors.
Exactly. That is where the shadows are. It is standard operating procedure for a politician to actively dismantle a veterans' healthcare bill during those closed-door committee sessions.
Oh.
They strip its funding, they attach toxic amendments to it, or they just delay it procedurally until it dies.
But then when that gutted, weakened bill finally reaches the floor.
Right. That same politician will proudly vote yes, so they can print campaign flyers declaring their unwavering support for veterans.
They kill the substance in the dark and then take credit for the ghost of the bill in the light.
That's a great way to put it. The report card strategy is the equivalent of an activist investor performing a hostile takeover of a corporate board.
Oh, interesting.
An activist investor doesn't just look at the end-of-year public earnings report. They dig into the localized spending,
Yeah.
the suppressed internal audits, the board's private communication.
You go deep.
Right. The Veterans Coalition is doing the exact same thing to the Georgia State Capitol. By tracking committee records, they are exposing the politicians who smile for the cameras but gut the bill in committee.
Which means there is literally nowhere for politicians to hide.
Nowhere. They are systematically eliminating the plausible deniability that politicians rely on.
That dramatically shifts the power dynamic.
It flips it completely.
If you are a state representative, you are no longer dealing with a localized group of angry constituents holding signs on the lawn.
Right.
You are dealing with a heavily centralized intelligence apparatus that is monitoring your procedural maneuvers and translating your committee sabotage into a failing grade.
And that failing grade is then distributed directly to 1.8 million highly organized voters in your specific district.
In your district, yeah, that would be terrifying.
It creates a completely closed-loop system of accountability, and the foundation explicitly states they maintain a constant presence at both the Georgia State Capitol and in Washington.
Really?
Yeah, they meet directly with the governor, state legislative representatives, and congressional reps.
So they aren't just sending email.
No, when they walk into those meetings, they aren't asking for favors. They are bringing the implicit leverage of that 1.8 million-strong report card right with them into the room.
But to execute a strategy of that magnitude, you cannot rely on well-meaning amateurs.
Definitely not.
You don't build a 1.8 million-person intelligence and lobbying apparatus with a casual volunteer committee meeting once a month in a church basement.
No, you need professionals.
Right. When you look at the leadership profiles provided in these sources, it becomes immediately clear why this machine operates with such lethal precision.
It really does.
The board of directors doesn't read like a standard nonprofit leadership team at all. It's constructed with the specificity of an elite task force.
Every single seat on this board represents a distinct operational capability.
So let's break them down.
Yeah, let's look at the chairman, Joel Willis.
Okay.
His profile notes a dedicated career in the Army with decorated military service. But crucially, he subsequently served as a senior appeals officer in Georgia.
Wait, a senior appeals officer? That legal and bureaucratic background is vital.
It's everything.
A senior appeals officer is someone who has spent their entire civilian career dissecting the inner workings of government failure. They understand exactly how claims are denied, how the red tape is structured to just, exhaust the applicant, and the exact procedural levers required to overturn entrenched bureaucratic decisions.
He brings the systemic oversight. He knows the government's playbook inside and out because he operated within it at a very high level.
Right.
Then you pair that bureaucratic fluency with Wilbur Jordan, the vice chairman.
Okay, what is his background?
He is described as a war hero and a retired sergeant major of the Army.
A sergeant major. That's the highest enlisted rank.
Exactly. Which means his entire career was defined by logistical mastery and personnel management.
Oh, wow.
A sergeant major doesn't deal in abstract strategy. They ensure the strategy is flawlessly executed on the ground by thousands of individuals.
So he's the guy making sure it actually gets done.
Yes. He provides the organizational discipline necessary to keep a 1.8 million member coalition from splintering into infighting.
That is a very specific set of skills.
Mm.
Which brings us to the financial architecture of the organization, and arguably, I think, the most jarring profile in the entire stack of sources.
Oh, Drew Keenan.
Yes. Drew Keenan, the treasurer. His trajectory completely subverts everything you'd expect.
It's wild.
Looking at going from Wall Street finance school to being a drafted Navy hospital corpsman in Vietnam, that is a massive whiplash-inducing life pivot.
It's a completely different universe.
Right. The text states he graduated from the Wall Street Finance School, so he is steeped in high-level macroeconomics, corporate structuring, and capital generation.
The math side of things.
But then he receives a draft notice, enters the Navy, and deploys as a hospital corpsman in Vietnam, a combat medic.
A combat medic. Yeah.
Going from the abstraction of Wall Street finance to the visceral, immediate trauma of frontline combat triage in Vietnam. How does having leaders with such extreme contrasts in their backgrounds, high finance, mixed with frontline combat triage, shape the way this nonprofit operates?
Well, usually you want your finance people to be somewhat emotionally detached so they can make hard fiscal choices, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's a numbers game.
But pure detachment in a nonprofit leads to mission drift. What Drew Keenan brings is the ultimate form of pragmatism.
How so?
Let's look at the concept of triage. On Wall Street, financial triage is about identifying failing assets, cutting your losses, and reallocating capital to ensure the survival of the corporate entity.
All right. It's clinical.
Very clinical, but
What?
medical triage in a combat zone is about making agonizing split-second decisions about human survival with severely limited resources.
Wow.
You are deciding who gets the tourniquet, who gets the morphine, who can actually be saved.
So you are basically balancing spreadsheets with one hand and stopping the bleeding with the other.
Precisely. As treasurer, he is architecting a financial engine that must be robust enough to fund a massive lobbying effort.
He needs to know the numbers.
Right. He understands how to structure sponsorships, manage operational capital, and ensure the foundation remains solvent. But that combat medic lens ensures that every single dollar raised is intrinsically tied back to the human cost.
He's not going to waste it.
No. He isn't going to authorize spending millions on superficial awareness campaigns if there are veterans in the state who cannot afford PTSD treatments or are facing imminent homelessness.
That makes total sense.
His background guarantees that the financial operations of the coalition remain ruthlessly focused on ground-level impact. And for anyone analyzing their structural transparency, his direct contact is listed right in the documentation.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's Drew Keenan51 at Comcast.net, just right there.
They really put it all out
Just
there.
to do.
And that blend of cold logic and deep empathy, it continues across the entire board. You have Norman DeWalt, listed as a board member. He is a retired computer engineer from Lockheed Martin and a United States Air Force veteran.
The tech guy.
Yeah, and he also works directly with the DAV and VFW to assist veterans with benefits.
This is the data infrastructure.
You have to have that.
You absolutely do. You cannot maintain a 1.8 million person database, cross-reference all those members with their specific state legislative districts, and then automatically distribute hyper-targeted committee report cards using a basic spreadsheet.
Right, you can't just use Excel for that.
You need defense contractor level systems engineering.
Lockheed Martin level.
Exactly. Lockheed Martin engineers build architecture that manages incredibly complex, high-stakes data. DeWalt applies that exact same systems thinking to voter aggregation.
So the underlying theme here really is translation.
Yes, 100%.
The leadership team is built to translate military needs into civilian and bureaucratic action.
And you see that with Jennifer Smith, too.
The marketing director.
Right. She has 10 years in the U.S. Navy. She translates the urgency of the mission into public messaging.
And then you have Belinda Caslin-Ellaby, the Financial and Wellness Outreach Coordinator.
Oh, she's a fascinating addition.
The text specifically notes she coordinates financial literacy and health and wellness programs at the Clayton County Library. She provides the critical link to local civic infrastructure.
The library is the ultimate democratic community hub.
It really is.
By integrating their programs through figures like Castle and Ellaby, the coalition ensures they aren't just some intimidating political lobbying group sitting in an office in Atlanta.
They're actually on the ground.
They are deeply embedded in the neighborhoods where these veterans actually live, providing immediate, localized financial literacy tools.
And finally, rounding out this elite task force, you have Charlie Turner.
The golf tournament chair.
Yes, he's a retired sergeant major, an educator, and a golf coach. And this specific role, managing the golf tournament, is the key to unlocking how this entire operation sustains itself.
It's the engine.
Because all of this high-level political leveraging, all of this database management and lobbying we just talked about, it requires massive amounts of capital.
It does. Grassroots passion is essential, but lobbying is expensive.
Very expensive.
Maintaining an active presence in Washington and the Georgia state capitol requires an economic engine that does not rely on unpredictable, passive donation.
Which brings us directly to the specific event highlighted in our source material, the 5th annual golf tournament.
Right.
Now, we need to analyze this not as a localized community calendar event, but as a case study in how modern, highly effective nonprofits structure their fundraising.
Because it's completely different from the usual model.
We are so used to the traditional gala model of charity, right?
Oh, yeah. Selling overpriced tickets to a dinner where people bid on silent auction items out of a sense of obligation.
Right. It's inefficient. The Veterans Coalition has engineered something entirely different here.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, they have built a B2B, business-to-business networking engine that operates under the guise of a golf tournament.
They are selling mutually beneficial corporate exposure. They aren't just asking for charity.
Oh, not at all.
So let's look at the mechanics of this specific case study to understand how it functions. The event is scheduled for Friday, June 26, 2026.
A Friday. Perfect for corporate outings.
Exactly. The location is the Crystal Lake Golf Course in Hampton, Georgia, zip code 30228. And the timeline itself reflects that Sergeant Major logistical influence we talked about.
There is absolutely no wasted time.
None.
It is heavily structured. Registration opens at 8:00 a.m., providing swag bags and snacks.
Which is an opportunity.
It is. Crucially, it's the first touch point for sponsors to get their branding into the hands of every single participant.
Right. And from 8:00 to 8:30 a.m., players have free range balls to warm up.
And then at exactly 8:40 a.m., there is a mandatory range brief conducted by the golf carts.
Precision.
Absolute precision. And after the day's play, all scorecards must be tuned in by 1:00 p.m.
It is a military operation.
It really is.
But the genius of this event lies in the economics of the registration and the sponsorship tiers.
The pricing strategy.
Yes. They utilize a tiered pricing model to ensure they secure early operating capital. Right now, for early registration, it costs $125 for a single player or $500 for a foursome.
Okay.
But they create urgency by instituting a deadline. After June 12th, those prices jump up to $150 for a single player and $600 for a foursome.
This is standard fiscal triage.
Explain that.
By incentivizing early registration, the foundation secures the necessary capital to cover the venue and the logistical overhead long before the event actually takes place.
So they aren't scrambling the week before.
Exactly. This completely de-risks the tournament for the nonprofit.
But the registration fees, that's really just baseline revenue.
Yeah, that's just covering costs, mostly.
Here's where it gets really interesting. The real financial and strategic leverage comes from how they sell their sponsorship packages.
Yes. The ROI on these is insane.
The text outlines two main tiers, and if you analyze these from the perspective of corporate marketing acquisition, the return on investment is, frankly, absurd. Let's start with the bronze tier.
Okay, the bronze tier.
It's named the Triple Nickel 505th Sponsor, and it's priced at $500.
So for a $500 investment, a local business receives 2 foursomes.
2 foursomes. That is 8 players on the course.
8 players. Furthermore, they are granted a whole sponsorship setup. They get to choose the hole, name logs are optional, and they get a physical table presence directly on the course.
We often think of charity as just dropping a check in a bucket, but this is different. We have to break down what that actually means for a civilian business.
Let's do it.
For $500, a local law firm, a construction company, or an auto dealership can send 8 of their employees or their prime clients out for a full day of golf.
Which is incredibly cheap.
That alone covers the cost in terms of corporate team building or client entertainment. It's basically a wash.
Yeah.
But the real value is that table setup. They aren't just putting a logo on a banner that people drive past in a golf cart at 15 miles an hour.
No, they have a physical footprint on the course. They are interacting face-to-face with a highly engaged demographic of veterans, community leaders, and other business owners.
It transforms the sponsorship from a passive charitable write-off into an active customer acquisition channel.
And it scales up dramatically when you look at the gold tier.
The gold tier is the Veterans Coalition title sponsor. It costs $1,000.
Only $1,000.
Right. And for $1,000, a business gets 4 foursomes.
That is 16 players.
16 players. But the critical component here is that the gold sponsor receives inclusion on all Veteran Coalition social media.
Okay, we need to connect that back to the very first statistic we discussed today.
The 1.8 million members.
Exactly. This is an organization with a 1.8 million person membership base.
Oh, wow. If a local business tries to buy digital advertising targeting 1.8 million specific, politically engaged residents of Georgia,
The cost per impression would be astronomical.
it would cost tens of thousands of dollars just for basic ad campaign.
Right. But the Veterans Coalition is offering direct integration into that massive communication network for a $1,000 title sponsorship.
It is a brilliant arbitrage of audience value.
It's a masterclass in nonprofit funding. By offering on-course signage, cart branding, and banquet speaking opportunities, the coalition is offering a high ROI B2B networking event that mutually benefits local businesses.
While entirely funding the coalition's legislative war chest.
Exactly.
It's structured almost like a corporate merger for a day.
Hmm.
By getting a business to sponsor the triple nickel 555th package or the title sponsor package, aren't they effectively deputizing civilian businesses into the veteran advocacy mission?
Yes, completely. Community integration is essential. They are breaking down the civilian-military divide.
Because they're physically together.
Right. When a local CEO sets up their sponsor table at a hole and they spend the day shaking hands with Joel Willis, Drew Keenan, or the veterans who directly benefit from the coalition's work, the advocacy becomes personal.
It's not abstract anymore.
No. The business community becomes economically and socially invested in the foundation's success. And frankly, with the event being on June 26th and today being April 2nd, 2026, anyone listening has plenty of time to get in on that early registration before the June 12th deadline.
It is a closed-loop ecosystem. The local businesses get unparalleled B2B networking, team building, and massive social media exposure.
Win-win.
In exchange, the Veterans Coalition generates the high-margin, unrestricted capital required to fund their legislative war chest and their grassroots support programs. And the structural contact point for this entire engine is listed clearly.
Oh, is it?
Trooper T. Turner. You can reach him directly at area code 404-932-0791.
They make the barrier to entry for corporate partnerships incredibly low.
Yeah, 404-932-0791. They just want you to call. But you know, all the money raised on the golf course and all the political capital generated by the report cards, it has to go somewhere.
It does.
What are the actual boots-on-the-ground issues they are fighting for? We have spent significant time dissecting the machinery.
Right, the how.
We understand how they wrangle 1.8 million votes, how they expose legislative sabotage through committee report cards, and how they fund this massive apparatus through these hyper-efficient corporate sponsorships. But what is the actual output?
What are they forcing the system to do?
Right. What are they forcing the political system to address when they leverage all this power?
The source material provides a very clear and honestly a deeply sobering list of core issues.
Okay, what's on the list?
They are fighting for baseline essential resources: healthcare, PTSD support, mental health counseling, homelessness prevention, housing, job training, and educational programs.
These are not abstract policy debates about marginal tax rate.
No, these are matters of immediate survival. But there is a specific phrase in their mission statement that requires some deep analysis here.
What's the phrase?
The coalition explicitly states that their mandate is to, quote, bridge the gaps often left by government services.
Bridge the gaps often left by government services.
Yeah.
That is a massive indictment of the federal system.
It is a profound admission of systemic failure. The Department of Veterans Affairs is a sprawling, multi-billion-dollar federal bureaucracy.
Massive.
In theory, a veteran transitioning out of active duty should have seamless access to healthcare, housing assistance, and mental health support.
In theory.
But the reality is entirely different. The federal bureaucracy operates on a timeline of months, if not years. Claims are backlogged. Appeals, which Joel Willis knows intimately from his time as an appeals officer, they can languish indefinitely.
A veteran dealing with acute PTSD who has just lost the rigid structure of the military and is struggling to reintegrate into civilian life, they cannot wait 18 months for a federal committee to process a disability claim.
No, they can't.
If they're facing eviction this week, the promise of a federal housing voucher next year is totally useless.
That means nothing.
The gap between the onset of the crisis and the federal response, that is where veterans are lost to homelessness, addiction, or worse. So what does this all mean for the newly transitioned veteran?
Well, it perfectly illustrates why a state-level, highly agile nonprofit is fundamentally necessary.
It sounds like the coalition is essentially running a parallel government support structure.
They are.
Is it dangerous that we rely on a golf tournament to fund PTSD support? Or is that local agility actually their greatest strength?
This raises an important question, but I argue that it is absolutely their greatest strength, because the federal government treats veterans as case files.
Just a number.
Right. A case file can be deferred. A case file can be denied due to a clerical error. But the Veterans Coalition, because they are funded by agile capital from local community events like the golf tournament, rather than sluggish federal grants, they can intervene immediately.
No red tape.
Exactly. If a veteran in Marietta needs emergency housing, the coalition can deploy resources today.
So they're essentially constructing the safety net that the public just assumes the government is already providing.
Which forces you to reconcile a difficult reality.
Yeah, I mean, on one hand, it is deeply unsettling that we live in a society where funding for critical PTSD support or homelessness prevention might literally hinge on a local construction company buying a $500 whole sponsorship at a Friday golf tournament.
Right.
That level of care should be a guaranteed baseline. It shouldn't be subject to the success of a local fundraiser.
It is unsettling, but it is also the reality of the landscape, and within that reality, the coalition's local agility is their greatest weapon. Bureaucracies treat veterans as case files. The coalition treats them as neighbors.
And they pledge to protect funding for physical, accessible locations like the Georgia State Veterans Service Center.
They do. In fact, the documentation lists their own physical footprint right at 140 Powers Ferry Road in Marietta, Georgia.
So you can actually go there.
You can walk right in, complete with direct access lines like 470-496-4946 and 770-298-7426.
They are completely accessible. They aren't hiding behind some automated federal web portal. They are standing right there in the community.
Because they recognize that recovery and transition require more than just, financial assistance.
What else do they need?
Well, the text explicitly states they aim to provide a comprehensive support network that offers community and belonging.
Belonging.
Yes. A massive federal bureaucracy cannot issue a voucher for belonging.
That's a great point.
Belonging requires proximity. It requires other veterans, people who have navigated the exact same trauma and the same bureaucratic nightmares, pulling you back into the fold.
That concept of proximity and humanity connects directly to a fascinating resource that was highlighted in their material.
The Library of Congress.
Yes, the text points to the Library of Congress Veterans History Project collection. They frame it as a repository of real hero stories.
Including that specific link in their materials is a philosophical statement.
How so?
By pointing the public and their members to the Library of Congress oral histories, they are aggressively pushing back against the sterilization of the veteran experience.
Like, I see what you mean.
When politicians debate VA funding on Capitol Hill, they talk in statistics. Millions of dollars, thousands of beds, percentages of backlogs.
Right, it's just data.
But statistics don't bleed. Statistics don't suffer from night terrors.
But an oral history recorded by a 22-year-old combat medic absolutely does.
Exactly. The coalition is treating veterans as living, breathing history. They view veterans not as statistics, but as living history that requires active preservation and respect.
They are demanding that the political establishment and really the civilian community at large look these individuals in the eye.
Yeah.
They're using the report cards to force political accountability from the top down. And then they're using community integration, oral histories, and direct intervention to provide human dignity from the bottom up.
It is a breathtakingly comprehensive architecture.
It really is. We set out today to extract the mechanics of how this organization operates, and the blueprint we found is just remarkable.
It covers every base.
We started by looking at the raw leverage of unifying 1.8 million individual voices and how they translate that passive demographic data into an active threat matrix through their hyper-targeted committee report cards.
They don't let politicians hide in the shadows of the markup phase.
They enforce total transparency.
Completely.
And we analyze the leadership think tank that's executing this strategy. A team that marries the rigid logistical discipline of Army Sergeant Majors with the legal fluency of an appeals officer, the data architecture of a Lockheed Martin engineer, and the profound, stabilizing pragmatism of a Wall Street finance expert who served as a combat medic in Vietnam.
It is a board designed for operational supremacy, not just symbolic oversight.
And then we broke down the economic engine that fuels this entire lobbying and support apparatus. The B2B networking model disguised as the 5th annual golf tournament.
To June 26th event.
By offering incredible ROI for local businesses, like the $500 bronze tier or the $1,000 gold tier that taps into a 1.8 million person network, they effectively deputize the civilian economy into their advocacy mission.
They synthesize community building and capital generation flawlessly.
They generate the capital necessary to act immediately, filling those critical, life-threatening gaps left by sluggish federal bureaucracies.
You really do.
If you are analyzing this as a business owner, or simply as someone who recognizes the necessity of this agile, life-saving intervention, the model is sitting right there. The tournament case study, again, Friday, June 26, 2026, at Crystal Lake Golf Course, is the perfect example of how to plug into this ecosystem.
And remember that early registration window closing on June 12th.
Right. It's a masterclass in securing early capital. And if you want your business involved, or just want to play a round of golf for a vital cause, Trooper T. Turner is waiting for your call at 404-932-0791. He represents the accessible, human face of the organization.
You know, as we conclude this analysis of the Veterans Coalition Foundation's operational blueprint, there is a broader, perhaps even more radical implication to consider here.
What's up?
We have spent this time deconstructing how military-grade discipline, applied to voter aggregation and localized fundraising, can force entrenched political machines to yield.
Right?
They have created a report card system that leaves politicians with absolutely zero plausible deniability.
They stripped away the camouflage.
They did. Now, extrapolate that blueprint.
Okay.
The Veterans Coalition uses military discipline to organize 1.8 million voices and create an actionable report card that forces politicians to pay attention. It makes you wonder.
I wonder what?
If everyday civilian voters in any given community organized around their own local issues with that same level of unified, highly structured precision.
Oh, wow.
If local communities built their own localized report cards, tracking every single committee amendment and distributing it to a unified voting bloc, how drastically and how rapidly would our political landscape change overnight?
It fundamentally rewrites the rules of engagement. You stop asking for permission and you start engineering accountability.
Exactly.
Well, thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We will see you next time.
See you then.